When the invaders came, they didn't arrive with a whisper. They came like a storm. The invasion began without warning. The skies over every major city on Earth turned dark as enormous alien ships appeared overhead, blocking out the sun. Their craft were sleek, imposing, shimmering metal behemoths, unlike anything we had ever seen. They hovered above us, casting long, ominous shadows over our tallest buildings, our monuments, and our homes. And then the attack started. They didn't communicate. They didn't offer demands. They simply struck. The first blow came from the sky. Beams of energy cut through skyscrapers like they were made of paper. Explosions rocked the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. People ran, terrified, trying to escape the destruction, but there was nowhere to hide. Their weapons weren't just powerful, they were precise. Entire buildings disintegrated in seconds, vaporized by alien energy weapons. Within hours, the world's most powerful cities were reduced to rubble. From New York to Tokyo, Paris to Beijing, the story was the same: mass destruction. No army could mobilize in time. The sheer speed of the invasion left humanity helpless. Our missiles, our tanks, our planes, none of it mattered. Earth's military forces scrambled to mount a defense, but nothing worked. Missiles launched into the sky were either intercepted or deflected by the aliens' energy shields. Jet fighters flew sorties, but they couldn't penetrate the invaders' defenses. Every military response was met with brutal efficiency. The aliens were prepared for everything we threw at them. Entire divisions of soldiers were wiped out in seconds. Our technology, what we had prided ourselves on for decades, was rendered useless. The electromagnetic pulses generated by the alien ships fried communication systems worldwide, plunging the world into darkness. Governments, military command centers, and global organizations were cut off from each other. The internet was gone, satellite networks shut down. The aliens didn't need to destroy every human, just our ability to fight back. And they did so with terrifying precision. Humanity's extinction seemed inevitable. We had never faced a threat like this. For the first time, we knew what it felt like to be truly powerless. The initial wave of the invasion was devastating. The aliens, with their superior technology and cold, calculated tactics, seemed unstoppable. They had clearly studied us, learned our weaknesses, and exploited them without hesitation. Every major power on Earth, every advanced military force crumbled within hours. It wasn't a war, it was a slaughter. But in the midst of this chaos, something unexpected began to happen. In the cities, in the towns, in the countryside, people were starting to think. While the invaders' technology had rendered modern warfare useless, humanity had one thing the aliens couldn't anticipate: the power of human ingenuity. Technology had failed us, but where machines stopped, human ingenuity began. After the initial shock of the invasion, with the cities in ruins and the world's technological defenses in shambles, a different kind of resistance was brewing. It didn't come from military bases or research labs. It came from the quiet, rural corners of the Earth, places that had always lived just outside the reach of modern technology. In these areas, life had always been simpler. The people here weren't dependent on high-tech devices to get by. They didn't rely on satellites for communication or automated systems for their work. These were the farmers, the builders, the mechanics, people who had spent their lives working with their hands, crafting, fixing, and building. And now, in a world where sophisticated technology was useless, their skills became humanity's best hope. When the machines stopped working, it wasn't chaos for them. It was just another day. With no advanced weapons to rely on, they turned to what they knew best: their tools. A hammer, a wrench, a shovel, simple objects that had been used for centuries. And with them they started to fight back. Not in the way the aliens expected. They didn't stand in open battlefields with guns and tanks. No, they fought smart. They used their surroundings, their knowledge of the land, and their tools to outwit the invaders. Farmers, who had spent their entire lives working the land, knew how to make use of every inch of it. They started to build traps, holes covered with branches, tripwires made from old fencing wire, simple but deadly snares made from rope. Alien patrols, scanning for survivors, suddenly found themselves falling into these traps. their advanced technology no match for the sheer cleverness of human ingenuity. While alien machines scanned for electronic signals, for communications and weapons systems, humans fought with things too simple for the invaders to understand. Mechanics, meanwhile, took a different approach. The alien drones that hovered overhead, with their sleek designs and deadly precision, were built for a world of high-tech warfare. But when a mechanic got their hands on one, they discovered something interesting. Beneath the layers of advanced systems were mechanical parts, not so different from the machines they had been fixing for years. With a simple wrench and some basic tools, they began dismantling these drones, learning how they worked, and most importantly, how to disable them. One by one, alien drones started to fall out of the sky, brought down by nothing more than human hands and a few tools that had been sitting in toolboxes for decades. The invaders, so confident in their advanced technology, hadn't anticipated that humans would fight back using objects that couldn't be hacked, couldn't be fried by EMPs, and couldn't be tracked through digital systems. They hadn't accounted for the fact that sometimes the simplest things can be the most dangerous. In the forests and mountains where the terrain was difficult for the alien machines to navigate, humans found other ways to resist. Loggers, miners, and hunters, people who knew how to work in harsh environments, began to organize. They used the landscape to their advantage, setting ambushes, using trees to block the invaders' paths, rolling boulders down hillsides to crush their machines. It wasn't about strength. It was about precision, timing, and knowing exactly how to use the world around them. As word spread, small groups of survivors began to form, each one using their unique skills to fight back in their own way. They didn't need central command. They didn't need fancy equipment. They needed only what they had always relied on, their brains, their hands, and the tools they knew how to use. In time, they began to share their discoveries. What worked for one group soon spread to others. Farmers shared their traps, mechanics shared their knowledge of dismantling alien tech, and everyone contributed something. Slowly but surely, these isolated pockets of resistance began to connect, like pieces of a puzzle coming together to form a bigger picture. It wasn't an army in the traditional sense. It was people doing what they had always done, surviving, adapting, and finding a way. And the aliens, for all their power, were starting to notice. Their patrols were disappearing, their drones were crashing, and still, they couldn't understand how it was happening. In their minds, victory was supposed to come easily, their technology too advanced for humans to fight back. But what they failed to realize was that humans were not like any enemy they had ever faced. We didn't need complex machines or advanced systems to survive. All we needed were our hands, our tools, and the will to keep going. Their first mistake was thinking this would be easy. Their second mistake was thinking they could outsmart us. For all their intelligence, for all their technology, the aliens had one critical flaw: they underestimated the human mind. As the resistance grew, so did the humans' understanding of their enemy. In those early days, when everything seemed lost, the first breakthrough came almost by accident. A small group of mechanics in a rural town had managed to bring down an alien drone using nothing more than a crowbar and a toolbox. At first, they didn't know what they had, but when they pried open the smooth, metallic shell of the drone, they realized something that would change the course of the entire war. Beneath the layers of alien design, there were mechanical components, circuits, joints, wires, things that, while alien in origin, could be manipulated. The drones, though seemingly invincible at first glance, weren't so different from the machines these mechanics had worked on all their lives. There were moving parts, engines, power sources, and like any machine, they had weaknesses. One wrong connection, one disrupted circuit, and they could be shut down. The key wasn't in building something new to destroy the drones. The key was in learning how to break what was already there. These weren't battleships that needed bombs. They were machines that could be dismantled with the right knowledge. With this revelation, the resistance took on a new strategy. It wasn't about meeting the aliens with brute force. It was about understanding their technology, breaking it down, and using their own complexity against them. Mechanics, engineers, and tinkerers began spreading the word. Every alien drone that was captured became a puzzle to solve, and each puzzle unlocked more weaknesses in the alien systems. Soon they discovered that the drones had vulnerabilities in their design. While their energy shields protected them from advanced weaponry, those same shields were overcomplicated. When pushed into low-tech environments, situations where they had to deal with things like mud, dust, and extreme physical forces, they began to falter. A few well-placed strikes with a crowbar or a hammer in the right place could disable a drone, forcing it to shut down completely. Suddenly, the machines that had once seemed unstoppable became just another problem to solve. A problem that humans, with their simple tools and sharp minds, were more than capable of fixing. But the breakthroughs didn't stop there. Farmers and hunters, operating in forests and mountains, discovered another vulnerability. The alien sensors were designed to detect advanced technology, electronic signals, heat signatures, and complex machinery. But what they didn't account for was nature itself. Dense foliage, natural rock formations, and thick smoke from controlled fires could all disrupt the alien sensors, making it impossible for them to locate human fighters hiding in the wilderness. In the cities, builders and construction workers found that the aliens' towering machines, designed to destroy infrastructure, could be sabotaged with the very materials they were supposed to conquer. A strategically placed explosion of simple construction materials, nothing more than debris and rubble, could collapse entire sections of buildings onto the invaders' machines, trapping them, immobilizing them, and leaving them vulnerable to further attacks. Everywhere, humans were finding ways to turn the aliens' strength against them. We didn't need to match their technology, we just needed to understand it enough to break it. The biggest breakthrough came when a group of engineers, working in secret, managed to reverse engineer part of the alien drone technology. Using only the parts they scavenged from disabled drones, they discovered a way to jam the aliens' communications. The invaders, who relied on a network of interconnected systems, found themselves unable to coordinate effectively. For the first time, their drones and soldiers became isolated from each other, vulnerable to attacks from the human resistance. It wasn't a large-scale victory. It wasn't a massive military operation. But it was enough to shift the balance. The humans had found a way to level the playing field. And the more they learned, the more the invaders struggled to keep control. What the aliens didn't realize was that their technology, for all its complexity, made them rigid. They followed patterns. They relied on their machines. And humans, we broke those patterns. With every captured drone, every dismantled machine, humanity became smarter. The aliens, for all their intelligence, couldn't adapt as quickly as the humans could. They were creatures of order, of systems, of precision. But humans thrived in chaos. We learned from our mistakes, adapted to every situation, and most importantly, we refused to give up. We didn't just survive, we evolved. We learned how to turn their weapons into ours. The tide was beginning to turn. The aliens, once confident in their superiority, now faced an enemy they hadn't expected, a species that didn't fight with overwhelming force, but with intelligence, adaptability, and a willingness to use whatever was at hand to outsmart them. The breakthroughs weren't flashy. They weren't the result of some secret weapon or hidden technology. They were the result of one simple truth. When pushed to the edge, humans will always find a way. What began as small victories grew into something much bigger. The aliens came expecting to crush us, but they didn't expect what came next. As more and more humans learned how to disable the alien technology, the resistance became stronger. Isolated groups of survivors started to connect. They shared knowledge, exchanged tactics, and organized themselves into a decentralized but highly effective force. And while the aliens still held overwhelming technological superiority, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time since the invasion, humans were no longer simply surviving. They were fighting back. It wasn't a war fought on open battlefields. There were no grand armies, no airstrikes, no massive naval fleets. Instead, humans used what they knew best: their environment, their tools, and their minds. In the forests, farmers and hunters worked together to create ambushes that left the alien patrols vulnerable. They didn't rely on heavy firepower or advanced machinery. Instead, they used traps made of rope and wood, pits camouflaged by leaves, and simple explosive devices made from scavenged materials. Every time an alien patrol entered the woods, they found themselves outmatched, not by weapons, but by terrain and tactics. The breakthroughs weren't flashy. They weren't the result of some secret weapon or hidden technology. They were the result of one simple truth: when pushed to the edge, humans will always find a way. What began as small victories grew into something much bigger. The aliens came expecting to crush us, but they didn't expect what came next. As more and more humans learned how to disable the alien technology, the resistance became stronger. Isolated groups of survivors started to connect. They shared knowledge, exchanged tactics, and organized themselves into a decentralized but highly effective force. And while the aliens still held overwhelming technological superiority, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time since the invasion, humans were no longer simply surviving. They were fighting back. It wasn't a war fought on open battlefields. There were no grand armies, no airstrikes, no massive naval fleets. Instead, humans used what they knew best: their environment, their tools, and their minds. In the forests, farmers and hunters worked together to create ambushes that left the alien patrols vulnerable. They didn't rely on heavy firepower or advanced machinery. Instead, they used traps made of rope and wood, pits camouflaged by leaves, and simple explosive devices made from scavenged materials. In the cities, construction workers and engineers devised clever ways to turn the urban landscape into a battlefield. They sabotaged alien machinery by collapsing buildings onto their positions. They created choke points in narrow streets where alien vehicles could be trapped and immobilized. In the dense maze of destroyed cities, humans had the advantage. They knew the streets, the hidden alleyways, the underground tunnels. They could strike and disappear before the aliens could even react. Guerrilla warfare became our weapon. We didn't meet them head-on. We hit them where they were weakest, using tactics they weren't prepared for. Even in the deserts and mountains, humans adapted. They used the extreme environments to their advantage, setting up ambushes in places where the aliens' machines struggled to function. The harsh conditions that the aliens found difficult to navigate became the humans' best ally. And each time the aliens lost, they struggled to understand how their advanced technology could be defeated by such simple means. The aliens were predictable. Their machines followed patterns. Their drones operated on fixed schedules, and their soldiers relied on their technological superiority to compensate for any tactical gaps. But humans were anything but predictable. We didn't follow rules. We didn't need precise systems. And that's what made us dangerous. In the beginning, the humans' victories were small, taking down a single drone, disabling a patrol, or cutting off an alien supply route. But as their understanding of the alien weaknesses grew, so did their ambitions. Soon, entire groups of alien forces were isolated and trapped, cut off from their reinforcements, unable to communicate with each other because of the jamming systems humans had developed. The turning point came when the resistance managed to sabotage one of the aliens' key command centers. It wasn't a grand battle fought with armies and tanks. Instead, it was a carefully planned strike by a handful of engineers and mechanics who had learned how to bypass the alien defenses using nothing but repurposed parts from captured drones. They overloaded the alien power systems, causing a chain reaction that crippled their local infrastructure. The aliens' greatest strength, their reliance on interconnected technology, became their greatest weakness. Once that command center fell, the aliens began to lose their grip on the surrounding region. They could no longer coordinate their patrols, and their drones, disconnected from the larger network, became vulnerable to further sabotage. The resistance capitalized on the chaos. Small victories turned into larger ones, and the aliens, for the first time, found themselves on the defensive. And still, they didn't understand. They couldn't comprehend how a species armed with nothing more than hammers, shovels, and ingenuity could defeat their advanced technology. But the truth was simple. The humans weren't fighting the same war the aliens had expected. The invaders relied on order, on precision, on overwhelming power. The humans, by contrast, relied on adaptability, chaos, and creativity. The key wasn't to beat the aliens at their own game. The key was to change the game entirely. What the aliens didn't realize was that humans had been fighting this way for centuries. Guerrilla tactics, improvisation, using the environment as a weapon, these were methods that had been honed over thousands of years of human conflict. The resistance didn't need advanced weapons. They just needed to be smarter, more unpredictable, and more determined than their enemy. As the resistance grew, the aliens found themselves increasingly outmatched. Their patrols disappeared, their drones were destroyed, and their supply lines were cut off. The humans had turned the tide, not through sheer force, but by outthinking their invaders at every turn. They came with technology that could conquer worlds, but they forgot the most important lesson: never underestimate the power of human ingenuity. By the time the invaders realized their mistake, it was too late. The humans had learned too much, adapted too quickly, and turned the very tools of their enemy against them. The alien forces, once unstoppable, were now retreating, struggling to maintain control over a planet that refused to be conquered. In the end, it wasn't our weapons that won the war. It wasn't our strength or our technology. It was our minds. As the alien forces crumbled, the truth became clear. The deadliest weapon the invaders faced wasn't a missile, a laser, or any other form of advanced military hardware. It was human ingenuity, the ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to find solutions where none seemed possible. That was what had truly defeated the alien invaders. The aliens had believed their superior technology would be enough. They thought that their machines, their drones, their energy shields would make them invincible. But what they didn't understand was that their technology made them rigid, predictable. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting their systems, layer upon layer of technological advancement that gave them immense power, but left them blind to the simple realities of survival. They had become so reliant on their complex machines that they couldn't imagine a species fighting back without those same systems. They didn't account for a species that could thrive in chaos. Where they saw order, we saw opportunity. Where they saw systems, we saw gaps to exploit. The aliens had entered the fight believing that brute force and overwhelming power would bring them victory. But in every encounter, the humans used creativity and unpredictability to outmaneuver their enemy. Where advanced missiles and lasers failed, a hammer or a crowbar succeeded. Where alien drones and patrols hunted for high-tech threats, humans used terrain, traps, and ingenuity to fight back. While the aliens followed strict protocols, humans broke the rules. We didn't fight the way they expected, and that made all the difference. And it wasn't just the tools we used, it was how we used them. A wrench, a shovel, a rope. These became the weapons of the human resistance. These simple tools, combined with knowledge passed down through generations, were used to disassemble the most complex machines the invaders had brought with them. But more than the tools, it was the human spirit behind them. The refusal to give up, the relentless drive to survive. This is what made humanity truly dangerous. The deadliest weapon wasn't something we built. It was something we already had. It was our ability to think, to adapt, to innovate. The aliens, despite their intelligence, couldn't comprehend how humans could be so effective with so little. They couldn't understand that the greatest power didn't come from technology, but from the mind of a human who refused to accept defeat. The invaders' reliance on order and structure made them vulnerable to a species that embraced the chaos of survival. And in that chaos, humans thrived. Every failed invasion, every captured drone, every retreating alien force was a testament to the simple truth: the aliens had been outsmarted, and not by some secret weapon or hidden technology, but by humans who used their everyday tools in ways the invaders could never have imagined. They came expecting to conquer us with their machines, but they didn't understand. Machines are only as powerful as the minds that control them, and in that we had the advantage. As the alien forces retreated, leaving Earth behind, it became clear that they had learned a valuable lesson. Their technology, no matter how advanced, wasn't enough to defeat a species that could think beyond the limits of that technology. The humans had turned the very tools of their enemy into weapons against them, and they had done it with the most basic objects, wielded by people who refused to give up. In the end, it wasn't just our tools that won the war. It was us. Our creativity, our determination, our ability to adapt to any situation. That was the deadliest weapon of all. The aliens had underestimated us. They believed that advanced technology made them invincible, but they forgot the oldest truth of all. It's not the weapon that matters. It's the hand that wields it. Earth was saved not by machines, but by the minds and hands of the people who live on it. The deadliest weapon in the universe? It wasn't a laser or a ship. It was us.